American Morning, the most news in the morning, period. Weekdays 6 Eastern.
Well, today, Barack Obama turns his attention from foreign affairs to issue number one, the economy. He'll be meeting with a group of economic experts, including Warren Buffett and former Fed Chairman Paul Volcker, as well as Google CEO Eric Schmidt. Still, though, there's still plenty of verbal sparring between the candidates over Iraq. And joining us now from Chicago, Robert Gibbs. He's a senior advisor for the Obama campaign. Robert, thanks for being with us this morning.
Good morning. How are you? Great.
Thanks for coming. Senator Obama was asked about what sort of U.S. troop presence he would keep in Iraq, given that he was talking with diplomatic and military leaders. And this is what he told Newsweek's Richard Wolff. He said, "I do think that's entirely conditions-based. It's hard to anticipate where we may be 6 months from now or a year from now or a year and a half from now." Now, he's saying conditions-based. That's something that John McCain has long advocated. Is this suggesting a shift in policy for Senator Obama?
Absolutely not. What he's talked about is removing our troops as carefully as we were careless getting in a 16-month timetable, which is about 2 years from now, getting those combat brigades out. But he's always talked about keeping a residual force either in Iraq or in the region to deal with counterterrorism. And that's the type of force that it's unclear what type of size you would have for that, because you'd have to see what the conditions were at that point. Those troops, as I said, would be involved in counterterrorism. They'd help to continue to train Iraqi police and security forces to keep the country secure and safe.
Can you give us a ballpark of what, of possibly how big a residual force and for how long they would need to be there?
No, look, I'm not a commanding general on the ground, and obviously that would depend mightily on where we were in the situation with Iraq. But most importantly, I think what you saw on this foreign trip and discussing with foreign leaders is somebody in Barack Obama who was in command of the facts, who people in this country could see as being effective on the world stage. The Iraqis over the past week have said to the entire world that they want to take more responsibility for their country, and Barack Obama believes we ought to give them that opportunity.
Now, in a recent article on Slate.com, John Dickerson writes about the overseas trip and argues that Barack Obama still holds some of the same policy views as he did more than a year and a half ago, even though a lot has changed in Iraq in particular. And Dickerson writes, quote, "When he voted against the surge in January 2007, he claimed on more than one occasion it would lead to increased casualties and sectarian violence. It didn't. How'd he get that one wrong?" Can Barack Obama now say that the surge worked?
Well, look, let's be honest, the surge did lead to increased casualties. We lost quite a number of servicemen and women last year. But you know what he also said was, of course, if you add 30,000 troops into a security situation, especially as effective as the men and women that we have in uniform, that you would see a decrease in the violence in Iraq. But the surge
They did see a decrease in violence, and they did see a decrease in sectarian attacks.
Right, but what the purpose of the surge was to create a security environment that allowed the political factions in Iraq to come to an agreement as to how they themselves would govern their country. That's where I think the grades are still very much out on that. We've seen very incomplete progress on whether or not the political reconciliation is going to take place in this country. That's what the surge was all about. Of course, our men and women did heroic work. We also saw, even before the surge started, a Sunni awakening where the Sunnis again took on al-Qaeda in Iraq in their region of the country. We saw a standing down of Shia militia. It's unclear if Barack Obama's plan, if we would have given that a chance, what the effect of that would have been by putting much more pressure on the Iraqis to come to a political reconciliation.
The jury's still out for Barack Obama as to whether or not the surge could be called a success in Iraq?
Well, again, has the security situation changed? Yes, and yes for the positive. Have we seen the type of political reconciliation that's necessary for these factions to come together and govern their own country? We haven't quite seen that yet. That's what we still lack.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the economics, because it is, of course, issue number one, and Barack Obama is going to be meeting, as we said, with some economic advisors today. Some of the polling shows that most voters actually do agree with McCain's position in favor of increased drilling for offshore oil, as well as building nuclear power plants. Now, Barack Obama has opposed both of them. Why does he oppose those positions?
Well, you know what we have to do in this country is take a series of short-term and long-term steps to address our economy. John McCain said a few months ago that he thought over the past 8 years we'd made great progress in our economy, that people were doing a lot better. I don't know what part of America he's talking to people at, but what we need to do is do what Barack Obama called for in January in a first stimulus and pass a second stimulus package that puts money into the pockets of Americans. We need to cut taxes on the middle class, but we have to make long-term investments in healthcare and education to drive the cost down of both of those, and also to invest in alternative energy so that we can produce more and more energy that's cleaner and safer. Look, the truth is we're not going to drill our way out of this problem. We never were. We have to make our cars more efficient. We have to invest in alternative energy. Only that way will we produce enough energy to drive down the demand and make it cheaper for people in this country.
What about the building of nuclear power plants?
Well, look, we think nuclear should be part of the mix of options that are considered, but right now we don't have any place to store the waste that's produced in a nuclear power plant. John McCain thinks we ought to dump it all in Nevada. Barack Obama has opposed that for any number of science and safety reasons. And unless or until we can find a place to store long-term the waste that's created on nuclear power plants, it's hard to see how that's a viable way of getting ourselves out of the energy mess that we're in right now. And we're in that mess for one simple reason. For the last 20 or 30 years, Washington has failed to do anything at all to make this situation easier and better for the American people. That's why we need a change, because the only thing, the most dangerous thing in this is doing the same thing over and over again, the same old tired ideas, the very same ideas that John McCain endorses today.
Robert Gibbs, Obama campaign senior advisor, thanks for being with us this morning.
Thanks for having me.